Well, let's bring in Australian Institute for Progress Executive Director Graham Young, whose comprehensive research into this topic has led to the conclusion that renewables will be eye-wateringly expensive, blackouts will be inevitable, and, here's the clincher, nobody in this government will take blame for the perfectly predictable catastrophe they are imposing on us. Graham, welcome to the show.
Pleasure, Fred.
Firstly, let's talk about the capacity you need to build into an energy system that relies on renewables. If the wind isn't blowing or the sun isn't shining in, say, New South Wales, then another state will need to step up and fill the gap. So that means you need to design each generator to supply more than is needed in its local area. Is that right?
Well, more or less, Fred. It's basically that you need more generators. It's not a larger generator, it's more turbines, it's more solar panels, larger areas of space. If you wanted to do a renewable-only system with no storage, you would have to have multiple duplications all over the country, and then you'd have to have wires connecting them, for which you'd have to pay full freight. But which would most of the time be barely used.
Yeah,
so
let's get back to the wires.
Of the amount of duplication.
So we'll get to the wires in a second, but it's the generation I want to focus on for just for now. So if we want to build a system that relies mostly on renewables, then that system needs to allow for the contingency when renewables are not available in one area. Therefore, the rest of the system needs to be able to provide for that area, for example, if the sun isn't shining or the wind isn't blowing. So therefore, correct me if I'm wrong, therefore the entire system's capacity needs to be considerably higher than what it is meant to supply at any one time. Is that correct?
That's right. So if you're talking about solar, it only works about 25% of the time if you're lucky. So that means that to get 100% of the rating on the solar, so say you've got a 1 gigawatt power station solar, you actually need 4 gigawatts of installed capacity to get that 1 gigawatt out. So you can either provide the extra via storage, and there's nothing apart from pumped hydro that works at grid scale at the moment. All this talk about batteries is a furphy. Or you need to have an alternative source of that amount somewhere else. And if you're on wind and solar, it's got to be a wind turbine at night, because it's reliably sure that you won't have any solar power after 5 o'clock at night, basically.
Yeah, and also you've pointed out before the weather conditions across the east coast of Australia, or the eastern part of Australia, is often quite similar. So if there's no wind in or very little sun in one part, then it's probably the same, say for example Victoria or South Australia, it's probably not very sunny or windy in New South Wales as well. So it could be the whole system that's performing well under its capacity, right?
That's right. So the advocates for more renewables without adequate storage contend that when the wind isn't blowing somewhere, it'll be blowing somewhere else. In Australia, we've got basically two networks. You've got the Eastern Seaboard network, and then you've got West Australia. So the Eastern Seaboard goes to South Australia. There is often a lot of wind down there, but when you do get these wind droughts, it's because of high pressure systems that move across the continent, and they do tend to affect South Australia, Victoria, New South Wales all at the same time, and possibly even Queensland. So your chances of actually managing to pipe wind power from one part of the grid to the other when the solar's out are lower than you might think.